John Morrissey, Morrissey, for the City of Kenosha Police Department. I appreciate everybody attending today under these very sad circumstances. I'm going to introduce the individuals that are up here, and in a little bit we'll describe why they're up here. And I'll just start at the end for convenience. That's Detective Dan DeJong, Captain Eric Larson in charge of the Detective Bureau, Kenosha County Medical Examiner Patrice Paul, Ron Rogers, he's the Director of Kenosha County Division of Children and Family Services, Detective Patrick Patton, Detective Jason Kenesey, Detective Daniel Bandy, our PIO, Lieutenant Brad Hetlett, and on the end is Beth Ballow, the Director of Women and Children's Horizons for Kenosha. I know you're all here to find out about this incident, and we're going to cover that. I'm going to tell you that some of the details I'm going to release are graphic, but we have to do something in this case to turn this very negative thing into a positive. So before I even go into the case, I'm going to ask Ron Rogers, the Director of Children and Family Services, to come up and explain that there are services and what those services are available in Kenosha County.
Thank you, Chief Morrissey, and I'll be very brief. Kenosha County is a community that wants to work together to prevent child abuse and neglect. And the Division of Children and Family Services, with the support of the county executive and the county board, funds literally over $1 million worth of services that the citizens can access to prevent child abuse and neglect. We want to receive any phone call of suspected child abuse and neglect. So first and foremost, locally here in Kenosha, our access office number to report child abuse and neglect is 605-6582, area code 262. And we, as you may or may not know, all callers can remain anonymous. We also have a great program that works after hours on weekends called Juvenile Crisis Intervention that can respond to reports of child abuse and neglect. That number is, again, area code 262-657-7188. But more importantly is, even if we had gone out on this, or as people had called about this, and there had not been abuse or neglect occurring at that time, we fund services through our, what we call our Prevention Services Network, that can help strengthen families, so hoping that a tragedy like this does not happen. Meaning we fund services that can provide such things as parenting, parent mentoring, in-home family therapy, AODA assessments, and other supportive services in order to strengthen families. So we just want to get the word out that Kenosha has services available that people can contact by themselves, family members can contact on behalf of another family member, where we can offer help and support for families in order to strengthen families and hopefully prevent a tragedy like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. And I'm going to ask Beth Ballow from Women Children's Horizons to come up. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is a domestic violence related incident and a child abuse, which is now a child death. So I'm going to ask Beth to describe some of the services that are available as well.
Thank you, Chief Morrissey, and thank you for being here for all of us. I first of all want to say that Women and Children's Horizons works in collaboration with law enforcement and with the Department of Children and Family Services on these cases. This one in particular demonstrates the absolute isolation and devastation that comes with violence in the household. I want to first of all say that this whole idea of domestic violence and sexual assault, child abuse, is power and control. There is very little a victim can do during the time because of the isolation that occurs. But what we offer as a community, and Kenosha is very active, proactive in these areas, is to offer confidential services to victims, and Women and Children's Horizons does that. We have a hotline, 652-9900, that anyone can call. We recognize this as a community issue. We want to be available to anyone who feels they need any sort of service, if they have any sort of question. We have a shelter, and we are most known for the shelter. but we also offer a variety of other services. Basically, we want to let people know that we will just listen if they come in, that we can offer to help them with a safety plan, and that we'll just talk about what their issues are, not necessarily to cause them to seek any other services. However, we can also refer to community resources to help them through the court process and to help them with any sort of reporting they might need. So with that, I want to thank you for all being here and to offer this opportunity to let victims know what we can offer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. I think the first thing we should do is we should put a face on this tragedy. So let's put a face on it. This is Serenity Rose, who was killed by her father. I've been an officer for almost 34 years. This is the most violent child death that I have ever been involved in. The words that I would like to say about this individual are probably not fit for media, so I'm simply going to refer to him as a monster. But let's put a face on this so we know what we're talking about. So we're talking about Serenity Rose today. Lieutenant Hatfield has pictures that are available for those that want it. As I go through this, you're probably going to think I'm jumping around to several different things. And I am in a sense because there were actually two scenes here. So as I talk, I'm going to talk about sequence of things that happened, but they're not necessarily in sequence of time because we have two different scenes. So last night, Tuesday, November 19th at 6:59 p.m., the Kenosha Police Department was advised of a 911 call in which a person indicated a woman was screaming that someone had killed her baby, and that female stated that someone had slammed the child to the ground. The address given was 5008 21st Avenue. At 7:04 p.m., the 911 center received a call from the suspect indicating that he had a quarter stick of dynamite and grenades and that he was by the water heater and would blow up anyone who came near him. Officer Alex Wickets arrived on scene and was flagged down by a subject indicating that the victim was at the residence located south of 5008 21st Avenue. Officer Wickets entered the residence and found a 27-year-old female, the mother of Serenity, who we're not going to name due to the domestic violence shield law, with injuries to include a swollen face, lacerations to her hand, and extremely hysterical. The 27-year-old female was next to Serenity, who is 11 months old, her child. Officer Wickets found the child to be lifeless, badly bruised, bloody, and appeared the face to be partially disfigured. However, he started CPR on the child, continued that until Kenosha Fire and Rescue arrived, and Serenity was taken to Kenosha Medical Center, and another rescue squad transported the 27-year-old female to the same hospital. While the above was occurring, officers had surrounded the residence of 5008 21st Avenue, and at 7:12 p.m. observed that the residence was now on fire. Officers began evacuating the building, fully knowing that the suspect inside was still inside and claimed to have explosives. At 7:18 p.m., the suspect exited the residence and immediately laid in the prone position and was taken into custody without incident. The suspect suffered burns to his arms and was taken to St. Catherine's Hospital for treatment. Life-saving efforts by Officer Wickets, Kenosha Fire paramedics, and the medical staff at Kenosha Hospital could not save the life of 11-month-old Serenity. The 27-year-old mother was admitted to the hospital for her injuries. Kenosha Fire Department then put out the fire in the residence. During this entire incident, a citizen who lives in the area heard the screams for help and could hear a baby crying. This citizen heard what he described as two thump sounds, and then there was no longer crying. He then saw the suspect holding something over his head, and then saw the suspect drop what he was holding over his head, and that's when he realized it was Serenity. The citizen then tackled the suspect in an attempt to keep him there. The suspect, however, got up and ran back into the residence. The citizen then assisted the mother and Serenity to the residence where Officer Wickets located them. That's where it gets confusing. This is all occurring the same time that Officer Wickets is there. So after the suspect dropped Serenity to the ground, he ran back in, lit the house on fire. Other officers were at the other place. It appears that this entire incident started over the suspect wanting the mother to move out of the residence that they shared with another individual. The suspect was eventually released from the hospital and is being held in the Kenosha County Jail on a parole violation. We anticipate sending reports requesting homicide charges as well as arson, substantial batteries, and other to the Kenosha County District Attorney's Office tomorrow. The suspect did provide a statement to the detectives. The suspect has an extensive criminal record to include felony conviction for delivery of a look-alike substance, battery to an officer, and escape. The manner of this death will be considered a homicide. The name of the suspect and the father of Serenity is Russell Lamar Rose, born in January of 1980. So I'm going to ask medical examiner Hall to come up, and she will talk a little bit about the cause of death and the autopsy today. We'll see. I don't know how many questions we can answer at the end, but let me finish everything before we take questions, please. Patty?
Thank you, Chief Morrissey, and thank you everybody for being here today. My name is Patrice Hall, and I'm the Kenosha County Medical Examiner. Our office, as Chief Morrissey has already stated, was also called to the hospital where Serenity was pronounced deceased. Our office does an investigation along with the police department, so we work together. We did perform an autopsy. The autopsy was performed this morning. As it has already been mentioned, the manner of death is homicide, and her cause of death is multiple blunt force injuries. That is all the information that I have for right now. Again, thank you for having me here today.
The multiple blunt trauma is to include several skull fractures. The death of any child is traumatic, but for a child to be killed in such a violent nature is unthinkable. The entire KPD has been affected by this senseless killing. The words I use to describe the suspect are inappropriate for the media, so I will just simply say that he is a monster. The killing has affected the fire personnel, hospital personnel, and everyone else that's been involved in it. I offer my sincere condolences and sympathy to Serenity and her mother and her extended family. I'm going to ask all parents, please tell your kids you love them, give them a hug. While this monster killed his own kid, life is too precious to make sure that your kids aren't loved. We are very fortunate at Kenosha PD to have a peer support team and a chaplain program to deal with this. You can look at the faces of the detectives. They've been working on this since last night. The majority of them have children. Officer Wickets is a young officer. These type of just senseless crimes, and again, I said, in my 34 years, I think it's the most violent child death that I've ever seen. And prior to moving up in rank, I used to work in sensitive crimes, so I dealt with a lot of it. I don't know that we can answer too many other questions. I understand that the story here is the death of Serenity, and it's a tragic story, but please take the words of Ron Rogers and Beth Ballow that there is help for the mothers, there is help for children. I don't know what else to say there. I don't know if I released it or not. Here is the suspect. We have pictures of him as well that Officer Lieutenant Hetlet can hand out here if you want one of those. He is currently in custody on the probation hold. We will take some questions. Again, I'm not sure if I can answer those because the district attorney has not received the formal paperwork for the charges. But again, it will include homicide, substantial battery, and arson, and probably others. The residence where this occurred is I believe I would call it a triplex. So there was other individuals that were evacuated from the residence. So we'll be looking at all of those charges. So
You're live on today's TMJ4. You have called this a clear-cut case of domestic abuse as well as a homicide. Have you been called to this home before for prior incidents?
not that I'm aware of.
And related to that, were there any calls to DCFS for this family before?
No.
Does anybody else have any other questions that we can try and answer?
Can you talk about the baby herself? As much as you know about Serenity, what was she like? What's been relayed to you? How people want to remember this baby?
You know, I can't speak to that. I don't know much about the child other than I think she's just an adorable child in that picture. As I said, any child death, but I guess what's kind of interesting in my life and my family is that my wife is an OB nurse, so she delivers babies on a daily basis, and they have been there when Serenity was born. And my son works as security at Kenosha Hospital, and he had the very unpleasant fortune last night of putting the young child in the body bag. So it's affected my family in many, many different ways personally, but it also affects the PD. So again, I don't know the child, and Dan, I don't know. Dan has been dealing with the mother today. If he can speak a little bit about the emotions of the mother. I mean, she's just distraught, but I don't know, Dan, if you have much you can add, you're welcome to come up and say a couple words here.
As to the question about the mother, she's obviously upset. The entire family's upset. They can't wrap their heads around how or why this happened.
Were you there yesterday?
Yes, sir.
I guess what's your reaction? I mean, you're obviously an authority figure, but it's a human element too. Talk about that.
I've never dealt with anything like this in 15 years. It's horrible.
Where is the mother now? Did you say she's still in the hospital?
I believe that they're still in the hospital, yes.
Is this his only child?
I don't know the answer to that.
Is it her only child?
I believe so.
You said he had a past with a lot of criminal past. Is domestic violence and any of that?
We're still looking into that. Not that we've saw here in the Kenosha area. I believe that he has some criminal activity to the north of us and some other places, and they're looking into that. What I read was what we're sure of, and that's the escape, the battery of the officer, and the drugs. There is a lengthy a juvenile record with this individual as well. Again, all of that needs to be sorted out. With again, all of the individuals up here, I think have children, and any child death is terrible. And I'm probably speaking out of turn here, but the ME's daughter is about a month older than Serenity here, so you take that into account of that. And I think of my 4 children, again, that are now in their 20s, but this is just, it's one of those that is gut-wrenching, and as Detective DeJong said, he's never dealt with it, and until you see this, and when you see the horrible abuse that Serenity suffered here, I don't think people understand the toll it takes. And I was quoted earlier at a media source, and we literally had officers that have been on 30+ years. They're walking around the department with tears in their eyes when they hear how violent this little girl died. So it does take a huge toll, and I know that all of you in the media unfortunately cover these stories way too often and hear it, but that was my point of trying to say there really is services out there, and we just have to pray to God people will use those services and get out there. But as Mr. Rogers said, I don't know whether the services would have helped here. This guy is nothing more than a monster. So, any other questions?
One last thing,
Yes.
I saw you changed your profile, the Facebook picture today, your profile picture. Was the idea there to just spread the awareness that you talked about, encourage people to speak up and report?
It is. Last month, we had the domestic violence thing up there all month. This morning, I talked to the sergeant that runs Facebook, and I said we're going to post nothing more than the newscast for Serenity's death today, and we're going to put up there that there is this there. Again, personally, it takes a toll on me, and I think everybody else up here. So you are correct. We changed it to put that up there. We've had it out there. You know, and if I thought that we could leave it there every day and it would make a difference, we'd do that. But again, let's put a face to it. You know, she just looks like a beautiful young child, and I guess any parent, or at least me, and I'm sure the rest of them sitting up here that are parents, you know, when I was contacted about this last night, and you hear the gory and graphic details, and then today I see the picture, I guarantee you I sit back and I think when my daughter was born, and I think when my sons were born and young, and all those emotions come back. I guess it's just so senseless, you know, if you don't like each other, then leave, get out. But why do you have to kill your child? I don't, I guess I can't make sense of it.
How do you spell Serenity?
Jason, that might be for you.
Serenity was spelled Serenity.
Is there any indication that there was abuse prior to last night?
We're still looking into the background of this, but immediately we're unaware of any indication, but like I said, we're still looking into it.
Who was this individual that apparently lived in that dwelling beyond the mother and the perpetrator?
For the purposes of his privacy, I'm just not going to name who that gentleman is.
And where again did this attack actually occur? I mean, the slamming was it almost that was inside the home. It wasn't outside.
I don't want to get into too many details, but it looks like it did occur in multiple places, possibly inside and outside. We're still kind of investigating everything.
Are you saying that he took the child from one location to the other location?
Again, I don't want to speak to the specifics of the investigation because it's still ongoing.
And then we have, how many people actually witnessed the slamming? It sounds like the mother must have been there, and then there was this other individual that tried to intervene.
Yeah, we have, off the top of my head, you know, maybe 5 to 7 individual witnesses that saw parts of the incident, maybe not the whole thing, but there are a few witnesses to it.
Is there any, was there ever an opportunity for anyone to try to seek the kind of help that's been kind of described here in this child's life? I mean, were people aware, maybe it's kind of early in the investigation, were people aware that things were apparently amiss?
I think it's too early in the investigation, Dave, to say that. I guess, though, I would say that when you ask if there's an opportunity, the opportunity is there for the mother, you know, to get out and to seek help. And again, we can't get into whether she had or had not sought those services because of confidentiality things, but I don't know that there was that opportunity last night. It was, again, as Detective Kenosha said, it is multiple scenes. I will say that it did occur both inside and outside. So it's, in that case, I don't think that the calls for those services were there, but there is always, well, I guess that's not fair to say always. Normally, the first event is not a fatal event. There's events there that people need to use these services.
Chief, going back to when this person had heard these screams and the two thuds, when they tackled the father, the alleged abuser suspect, was this outside?
Yes.
In the front yard, backyard, this front street?
I'm not exactly sure. I believe it was in like an alley area between the things. It was outside. again, just to clarify that, the citizen witness heard a baby crying, heard what he described as 2 thumps. The baby was not crying, observed the suspect holding something above his head, and then drop what he was holding. Turns out that was Serenity, and that's when the citizen tackled him. So just to be clear, the citizen didn't tackle him when he was holding Serenity. He had dropped Serenity to the ground before the citizen tackled him.
Ultimately, is that where the officer found the baby?
No. Ultimately is where the citizen assisted the baby and the mother running a couple residences to the south. And that's where the officer found the baby and the mother.
Outside?
They were inside the residence a couple south.
But
I'm not using the residence address where they were found because it's a relative, and we don't need, there's some issues where they're looking for privacy.
Just for clarification, the officer responded to a separate house
He
with
was-
the mother and baby.
Correct. He was flagged down prior to getting to the original call and stopped and rendered aid to the mother and the Serenity.
And then at that point, the suspect went back to the field.
Well, see, again, it's all prior to there. There's 2 things. After the the citizens tackled Mr. Rose, he got up, Mr. Rose ran back in his house. The citizen assisted the mother and Serenity going to a different residence. The suspect, Mr. Rose, went into his residence, called 911, indicated he had the dynamite and grenades, lit the house on fire. So we have 2 very, and again, I hope I explained to begin with, it was going to be very confusing because there was 2 very active scenes. Again, Officer Wickett happened to be one of the first to arrive, so he stopped to assist the Serenity, and the mom and other officers had surrounded the residence. Anybody else? One
Chief,
last chance.
You
Yes.
mentioned the suspect maybe had some issues north of us. Could you define that a little more? Is it Racine or behind?
Well, Racine and farther north. I think it's Kakana or something like that. There's some other things on his criminal record that we were looking into.
Just going up the line, basically.
I don't know that that's a fair statement, but yes. Racine and then in some prison issues.
Okay.
Could
Were there
anyone,
any mental health issues that you're aware of?
I don't know at this point.
could anyone describe the demeanor of the suspect last night, or what he told investigators in his statement?
No, I'm sure they could, but I think that's very important in the decision-making that Mr. Zapp will have to decide. So that's why I did make the statement that he did make a statement to us, but I don't think we can get into, and nor should we, what he said in his demeanor. I think that's very important into what Mr. Zapp will evaluate when he reviews this case tomorrow, hopefully.
Chief, were there explosives?
No, Pat is more the fire guy, and he only had like sparklers or something, yeah.
No indication.
No indication of explosives found in the residence. The basement, Pat, you can maybe speak to the condition of the home. This is Patrick Patton. I think there was significant burns.
Yeah, there was multiple origins of fires. So fires were set at least 4 different locations in the home. And the main one being the basement. And it grew up from there. So no indications of any explosives. It sounds like it was just threats. So.
Significant damage, though.
Yeah, the basement, there's very significant damage. And we were actually on scene for the fire itself, and it was a pretty fully developed fire.
And mother and child were out of the house, just to clarify, during when he was setting all these fires, correct?
That's our understanding.
When you went, were you aware of the domestic situation and all that, or you just knew of fire?
It was very fluid, very dynamic, so we were kind of getting information from everything. We obviously were able to see the fire. We knew that there was a medical condition on the other end. We knew that there was a suspect in the house that we were trying to, or someone that we were trying to make contact with.
What goes through your mind in that situation? It seems like a very loaded situation.
Us from the Detective Bureau were not as actively involved as the officers were, so I think they could probably give a better aspect to that. It was a very coordinated effort between officers and the Kenosha Fire. So they had, like I said, they had a medical issue, they had the criminal aspect, plus a fire. So.
You mentioned severe damage. Now, is that just in that particular apartment there?
It was
seemed
con-
like there was others still living there at this point.
It was referred to as a triplex. There was also someone that did not live with them in an upper that was not there.
Any other questions? Just to clarify then, in case anybody needed it, that's Detective Patrick Patton that spoke, Detective Dan DeJong that spoke, Detective Jason Kenosha that spoke. And if you need their spelling, we can get those afterwards.
Will you be sending out a picture of Mr. Rose?
We,
And
if
you've
you
got
want
a
to see,
hard copy.
we have a hard copy you can have. If you want to talk and give your information to Lieutenant Brad Hedlett there, he will be happy to email you both pictures if you'd like them. Anything else? Thank you all very much. Please get the message out about help. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'd like to say go home and get some rest after I have dinner.